The young bride walked into the courtroom still wearing her wedding gown. Tears had ruined her makeup. Her veil hung loosely from her trembling shoulders, and her bouquet, once full of white lilies, had withered in her grip. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Justice for more powerful true-to-life stories that touch your heart and remind you that truth always finds its way. Now, let's begin. The courtroom fell silent as she stepped forward. The sound of her heels echoed across the marble floor. The judge, a composed man in his 60s with calm yet observant eyes, looked up from his notes. Everyone's eyes followed the bride, Emily Carter, as she stood before the bench clutching a folder close to her chest. "Your Honor," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I'm not here for pity. I'm here for justice." The judge motioned her to sit. Even the clerk paused mid-note, sensing this would not be an ordinary hearing. Just 24 hours earlier, Emily had been the happiest woman alive. It was a bright spring morning, sunlight spilling into her parents' countryside home. The air smelled of roses, coffee, and excitement. Her mother adjusted her veil, smiling through happy tears. "Look at you, sweetheart. My little girl is a bride now." Emily smiled back, feeling like her life was finally falling into place. She had met Daniel 2 years ago, a charming young architect with kind eyes, a sense of humor, and the type of man who remembered every small thing about her. Or so she thought. They met at a charity fundraiser where Emily was volunteering as a nurse. Daniel had donated a large sum to the hospital fund that night, and the way he carried himself, humble yet confident, made her believe he was different from anyone she'd ever met. He brought her flowers at work, waited outside the hospital to walk her home, told her stories of the home they would build together someday, and for 2 years that dream seemed real. So on the morning of her wedding, Emily's heart was light. Her friends laughed in the next room, sipping champagne as they fixed their dresses. The photographer moved around the house, capturing every glowing moment. The lace, the laughter, the promise. If only she had known what was about to come. 3 days before the wedding, Emily received a message from an unknown number. "Do you really know who Daniel is?" At first she ignored it. Probably a prank, or an ex trying to ruin things. But then another message came with a photo attached. It was Daniel standing outside a restaurant holding hands with another woman. Her heart raced. She zoomed in. The woman's face wasn't clear, but Daniel's expression was. He wasn't caught off guard. He was smiling. That night, Emily confronted him. "Who is she, Daniel?" He laughed softly, sliding his phone away. Please, don't let random people ruin our wedding week. You know how people get jealous." His voice was gentle, reassuring, the same tone that had always calmed her. And for a moment, she believed him. She wanted to believe him. The next morning, he showed up at her place with a bouquet of white roses and said, "Let's forget the noise. You and me, that's all that matters." So she smiled again, forgave again, believed again. The church was filled with family and friends. Soft music played as Emily walked down the aisle, her father holding her hand. Daniel waited at the altar, smiling, almost too perfectly. When she reached him, he whispered, "You look like a dream." The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. The world seemed right again. But right after the kiss, as they turned toward the guests, Emily saw something. Or rather, someone, a woman, standing at the very back of the church. She wasn't dressed for a wedding. Her face was pale, her eyes full of sorrow, and in her hand she held a small envelope. Their eyes met. Emily froze. The music blurred. Her hand slipped from Daniel's. The woman turned and left quietly, as if her purpose there was done. Emily felt her chest tighten. A strange chill crept down her spine, but she pushed it away, smiling for the cameras, greeting the guests, pretending everything was fine, until, during the reception, her maid of honor handed her the envelope. "Someone left this for you," she said. Inside was a single piece of paper. It read, "He's married, and I have proof." Emily's world stopped. She read the line again and again, her hands shaking. The laughter around her faded into a distant hum. She looked across the hall at Daniel, laughing with friends, glass in hand. The perfect groom. Something inside her broke. She slipped away from the crowd, her dress brushing against the wooden floor, and locked herself in the bridal suite. Tears blurred her vision as she searched online for Daniel's name. Her heart pounded as she clicked on a public record, and there it was. Daniel Foster, married to Anna Lee Foster, married 2 years ago. Still legally married? Emily dropped the phone. Her body went cold. He hadn't just lied, he had built a life of lies. Her parents knocked on the door. "Emily, honey, are you okay?" She couldn't answer. The world around her had shattered. That night, she didn't go to the honeymoon suite. Instead, she went to the police station. A kind officer listened as she trembled through her words. Bigamy, fraud, emotional abuse. She handed over every message, every receipt, every photo by morning. She had filed a case, and by the next day, still wearing her wedding dress, with mascara stains and wilted flowers, Emily Carter walked into court for her first hearing. As she stood before the judge, the courtroom remained silent, every spectator aware that they were witnessing something rare, a woman who turned her pain into strength, her humiliation into justice. The judge studied her face for a moment. "Ms. Carter," he said softly, "are you sure you're ready for this?" Emily looked up, her voice steady despite her tears. "Yes, Your Honor. I have nothing left to lose and accept the truth." The gavel struck once. The case had officially begun. The judge leaned back in his chair, scanning the documents Emily had placed before him. Her wedding ring still glimmered faintly on her hand, a cruel reminder of promises already broken. On the opposite side, Daniel sat at the defendant's table. No tuxedo now. Just a plain suit, his tie slightly loose, his charm replaced by unease. For the first time, the courtroom walls felt smaller to him, the way truth makes even large spaces suffocating. "Mr. Foster," the judge began, his voice even but firm, "you're being charged with bigamy, marrying while still legally bound to another spouse. Do you understand the seriousness of this charge?" Daniel nodded, but his jaw clenched. "Yes, Your Honor." Emily sat quietly beside her lawyer, her eyes fixed on the man who had once called her his everything. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Harris, rose from her seat. "Your Honor," she said, "what we have here is a man who not only deceived a woman into marrying him, but maintained 2 lives, 2 identities, and 2 promises. The evidence we'll present will show deliberate fraud, emotional manipulation, and utter disregard for the law." She glanced toward Emily. "We'll also prove that Ms. Carter had no knowledge of his existing marriage until the very day of her own." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Ms. Harris walked to the center of the courtroom and clicked a small remote. The screen behind her lit up, a slideshow of photographs, receipts and documents. "This," she said, pointing to a marriage certificate, "is from the county clerk's office, dated May 2019. Daniel Foster married Anna Lee Foster. No divorce was filed, no separation request submitted." Daniel's lawyer stood quickly. "Objection, Your Honor. The defense will present evidence later proving the couple had been separated, not divorced," Ms. Harris cut in. "Separated, yes, but still legally married, which makes his second marriage a crime." The judge nodded slowly. "Objection overruled. Continue." For the first 20 minutes, Daniel tried to maintain composure. His lawyer whispered strategy into his ear. Something about misunderstanding, emotional distress, paperwork delays. But Emily could see the tension building in his shoulders. He wasn't used to losing control. Daniel had always been the kind of man who talked his way out of trouble. The kind who smiled when cornered. Not today. When Ms. Harris presented screenshots of text messages, the ones where he told both women he couldn't wait to start there forever. Daniel's smirk faltered. The courtroom murmured. The judge rapped his gavel for silence. Emily sat still, her heart pounding, her hands trembling in her lap. Every image, every message, every date felt like another crack in the illusion she had once lived inside. Then, Ms. Harris announced, "The prosecution would like to call its next witness, Mrs. Anna Lee Foster." The courtroom doors opened, and there she was. The same woman Emily had seen at her wedding. Anna walked slowly to the witness stand, dressed modestly, her expression composed but her eyes heavy with exhaustion. When she took her oath, she glanced briefly at Emily, a silent exchange of shared pain, of 2 strangers bound by one man's betrayal. "Mrs. Foster, Miss Harris began gently. Can you tell the court how you know the defendant? Anna looked straight at Daniel. He's my husband, or at least I thought he was. Her voice cracked. We got married 6 years ago. I supported him through school, through debt, through everything. Then 2 years ago, he started traveling more, saying he had new projects out of town. She swallowed hard. Then one day I found hotel receipts, gift bills, all with someone else's name. Emily Carter. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's eyes widened. Daniel turned red, his hands tightening around the edge of the table. Anna continued. I confronted him. He swore she was just a client. But when I saw the wedding photos online, I knew he had done the unthinkable. She took a deep breath. So I went to her wedding, not to ruin it, but to warn her. She deserved the truth. The judge nodded solemnly. Thank you, Mrs. Foster. As Anna stepped down, she passed Emily. For a brief second, she stopped and whispered, You're braver than I was. Emily closed her eyes, holding back tears. When it was the defense's turn, Daniel's lawyer tried to turn the narrative. Your Honor, my client admits to mistakes, but he never intended to deceive anyone. His relationship with his first wife was effectively over. Emotionally, he had moved on. This is not a man who plotted fraud. This is a man caught between two lives. The lawyer turned toward the jury. Haven't we all made choices we regret? He didn't steal, he didn't harm anyone, and he just fell in love twice. A murmur of disapproval spread through the courtroom. Emily's lawyer stood. So your defense is that he accidentally married another woman? The defense lawyer hesitated. He believed his previous marriage was void due to separation. Ms. Harris snapped. Then why didn't he file for divorce? Silence. Daniel looked down. His hands were shaking. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Foster, you will have a chance to speak. But remember, honesty here may be your only redemption. When Daniel finally stood, he looked nothing like the confident man from the wedding. His voice was low, his words measured. I never wanted to hurt Emily, he said. Anna and we were done long before I met her. We hadn't spoken in years. I thought it didn't matter anymore. The prosecutor's voice cut sharply. So you thought your vows didn't matter either? Daniel's eyes flickered with anger. I made a mistake, all right? I loved Emily. I still do. She doesn't understand how lonely it felt. Emily's heart clenched. For a second, she almost pitied him. Almost. Then he added quietly, and maybe if she hadn't gone to the police, we could have fixed this privately. The entire courtroom went still. The judge's eyes hardened. You're blaming her for reporting a crime you committed? Daniel opened his mouth but found no words. That will be all, the judge said sternly. As Emily took the stand, her pulse thundered. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. Just speak your truth. Emily took a deep breath. When you love someone, she began softly, you trust them completely. You believe every word, every promise. You build your future around them. She looked at Daniel, her eyes wet. And when that trust breaks, it doesn't just break your heart. It breaks you. Her voice steadied. He didn't just lie about being married. He lied about everything, his honesty, his dreams, his soul. And I might have forgiven all of it if he had just told the truth before I walked down that aisle. A quiet sob echoed from the audience. Even the judge lowered his gaze. Emily continued, I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because I want my pain to mean something. Because maybe somewhere another woman might walk away before she ends up in a white dress standing in a courtroom. The room was silent. The judge finally spoke, his tone gentle but resolute. Thank you, Ms. Carter. You've said what many are too afraid to. The gavel struck once more. Court adjourned for the day. As Emily stepped out of the courtroom, flashes from the reporters' cameras filled the air. The story had spread like wildfire. Bride sues husband for bigamy. Walks into court in wedding dress. But Emily didn't care for headlines. She only cared for peace and for justice. The next morning, the courtroom was filled to the brim. Reporters, law students, and ordinary citizens packed every bench, whispering about the bride who came to court in her wedding dress. Emily arrived early. She no longer wore the gown, just a simple navy blue dress, but she carried herself with the same quiet dignity she had the day before, her wedding ring now absent from her hand. The judge entered promptly at 9. The gavel struck once. Court is now in session. We'll hear the closing arguments before I deliver my verdict. Emily sat with her lawyer, hands clasped tightly. Across the room, Daniel's face looked pale and restless, his arrogance replaced by dread. Miss Harris stood first. Her voice, though calm, carried through the courtroom like a bell. Your Honor, this isn't just about a man who broke the law. It's about a woman who stood for herself when deception tried to silence her. She paused, letting the words settle. Daniel Foster didn't make an innocent mistake. He made a calculated choice to live two lives, to enjoy the benefits of both, and to discard whoever caught him first. She turned toward Emily. When Ms. Carter walked into court wearing her wedding dress, she didn't do it for attention. She did it because that dress was her evidence, the symbol of her trust, her love, her humiliation. The courtroom fell silent. She could have hidden. She could have begged for forgiveness. Instead, she stood up and said no more. Ms. Harris looked toward the judge. Your Honor, we ask the court to deliver not just a legal sentence, but a moral one, to remind every man and woman that love is not a license to lie. She sat down, and the silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. Daniel's lawyer rose next, looking exhausted. Your Honor, my client has admitted wrongdoing, but he's also shown remorse. He has no prior record, no history of violence, and his actions, while deeply misguided, stemmed from emotional confusion, not malice. He gestured toward Daniel. Mr. Foster understands the gravity of what he's done. He's already lost everything. His career, his reputation, the people who trusted him. I urge leniency not as forgiveness, but as a chance for redemption. The defense sat. Daniel looked up briefly at Emily, his eyes pleading. But Emily didn't look back. The judge removed his glasses and folded his hands. Mr. Foster, he began, I've presided over hundreds of cases, theft, fraud, violence, betrayal. But few have left this kind of mark on this courtroom. He looked toward Emily, and few have displayed the courage Ms. Carter has shown. Turning back to Daniel, his tone hardened. You claim confusion. You claim emotional distress. But confusion doesn't forge marriage licenses. Confusion doesn't deceive two women at once. That takes intention and deceit. Daniel lowered his head. This court finds you guilty of bigamy, fraudulent representation, and emotional abuse. Gasps echoed across the room. The judge continued. You are hereby sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, with eligibility for parole after 18 months. In addition, financial restitution will be awarded to Ms. Carter for damages sustained. Daniel's face turned ashen. His lawyer whispered something, but it didn't matter. The verdict had fallen like a stone. The gavel struck once more. Court adjourned. As the guards led Daniel away, he turned toward Emily. I loved you, he said quietly. You were everything I wanted. Emily met his gaze for the first time that day. No, she said softly. You loved control. You loved pretending. Real love doesn't hide in lies. He said nothing more as they took him away. The room emptied slowly. Reporters whispered, papers rustled, footsteps faded. Emily remained seated, staring at the judge's bench, the place where she had come broken and left whole. Outside, the sky was bright and clear. A few journalists approached, microphones in hand. Ms. Carter, do you have a message for other women going through something similar? Emily smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. Yes, she said. Don't wait for someone else to save you. Sometimes justice begins when you stop making excuses for those who hurt you. The crowd went quiet. Cameras clicked, but Emily didn't pose. She turned and walked away. Not as a victim, but as a survivor. 1 year later, Emily sat in a classroom full of young nurses, teaching them about ethics and patient care. Her voice was calm, confident, the kind of voice that came from surviving storms. On her desk, a small framed quote read, "The truth doesn't destroy you. It frees you." When the class ended, a student lingered behind. Miss Carter, she said shyly, I saw your story online. You inspired me to leave someone who lied to me, too. Emily smiled warmly. Then it was all worth it. She looked out the window at the sunlight pouring in. For the first time in a long time, the world felt beautiful again. And somewhere deep inside, she whispered a silent thank you to herself for never giving up on the truth.